Oh my God! Spirituality in times of crisis on the next Mystic Fix.
Mystic Fix, a program for the whole being with Julia Gordon-Bramer on NewsTalkSTL.
Welcome to Mystic Fix. I'm Julia Gordon-Bramer. I'm a poet, a scholar of mysticism, and author of the forthcoming book, Tarot Life Lessons, which I'll tell you more about later. I've got Anton as engineer in the studio with me today. Woo! And I could not be happier to have his light, his positive energy, as today's episode deals with one of the harder cards in the tarot, which is the Tower. The Tower is a crisis card. It's about blow-ups, tragedies, and everything falling apart. But I like to say that when we pull the Tower, the foundation is wrong, the building has to come down, it's time to rebuild. So it's not all bad, but it's rough. That's what this Mystic Fix is all about, crisis and rebuilding. And I've got a really special guest, Rob Alderman, who is a former man of the cloth turned PR guy, to share his own story and to give us tips for coping with crisis through spirituality. Let's take a listen. I am so happy today to welcome my friend Rob Alderman, who goes way, way back, probably some close to 30 years, right?
Oh, sure.
Rob Alderman grew up the son of a music minister in a Pentecostal church. He later left Indiana to attend Lee University, a Church of God school in Cleveland, Tennessee. After experiencing crippling anxiety and panic attacks, Alderman studied meditational and Orthodox faith, which led him to become an ordained Anglican priest. He then attended Bethel Theological Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota, where he attained his master's in theology. His thesis focus was on pop culture and ecclesiology, which is such a cool combination, studying the places where Christianity and secular culture collide. So welcome, Rob.
I'm super excited. It's a lot of fun. When I hear that bio, I'm much older than I was when we met.
Yeah, I think you were 19, right?
Most of that had not happened.
So those who don't know anything about you, you were first my cartoonist and a writer for Night Times magazine back in the 1990s, and we met on the Matthew Sweet Prodigy bulletin board.
That's right. We were paying by the minute.
And it's a quality friendship, and it has endured all this time. So,
yeah.
You know, one thing we've been in touch over the years, and I guess I knew you had some anxiety, but I didn't know it was crippling the way you've described it. And the theme of this episode of Mystic Fix is kind of in alignment with the Tower card, which is basically, you know, freakouts, trauma, tragedy, anxiety is certainly a part of it. And maybe you could share a little bit about that journey.
The Tower card. I don't know much about tarot.
And you don't have to.
I'm for it. You know, I like it. The older I get, it's funny, you know, growing up evangelical,
Mm-hmm.
You start out not for much. You start out kind of, and that's, you know, something we'll get into later is one of the main reasons that I really embraced Orthodox faith was I started to realize that so much about my evangelical faith, which I still love, and you know, I wouldn't call myself, there are people who call themselves, you know, deconstructed or ex-evangelicals, and usually that just means they're very angry. And I wouldn't put myself there. That's not a thing I would say. But it always is better to know what you're for. And there's so much about the evangelical faith that was, I'm against. Even in later in life, as I studied ecclesiology and pop culture, I would learn so much that, you know, the Orthodox faith has the lectern to the side. So the reason that the evangelical faith has the lectern in the middle is just so it wouldn't be like the Orthodox faith, right? I'm like against that. And so that led me to kind of, I guess, push further and further into things that I'm for. And one of the things that I'm for, I was listening to your podcast so that I'd be more acquainted for this. And in particular, I was listening to the episode about death.
Yeah.
And it was so moving and just so, it was so beautiful. And I was thinking about you and our friendship over the years, and this woman that you were speaking to. And she was like saying, in particular, she's talking about prayer and well-wishing and the healing of the body. And it only goes so far. And I think at some point you said, cars break down. And I got so emotional. I pulled over on the side of the road and I was thinking like, right, yeah, cars break down in a lot of ways. And so therefore we have to be for so many things. There's a lot of ways to fix a car. There's not just one way to fix a car. And so I'm for so much now that I don't even know, but I think, yeah, if there's a card about freakouts and worry, that would be good.
Well, you say about what you're for, and I think of the kind of business model today is don't give me more problems, give me solutions, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Kind of similar thinking.
Well, that's on my arm. It says, all hail the tagline of my business, the Alderman Group, is all hail solutions.
Cool.
And we've built around that idea that we're not just marketing, or we're not just this, we're not just that, but ultimately we're here to help people fix a problem. A couple days ago, we have a high scale dog, like a dog food store slash training kennel, doggy daycare sort of boarding place, and they lost a dog, and it ran out the gate, and they are out in the country. I'm in Tennessee, rural, and I got a message from one of my guys, and it just said, call me ASAP. And I found out, our whole team was out in the woods using cameras and drones and the stuff that normally we're using to film commercials, or we're using to film podcasts like this. And they were flying drones over the farmland looking for this dog. And at first I thought, we're a marketing company, we don't do that. Just so proud of them, right? They were fixing the car, so to speak. They're doing whatever it took to fix the car. I went from annoyed to really proud, really fast. And just the idea that they would be out there doing it. So anyway, there you go. I don't know how I went down that tangent. Because of your podcast. I was thinking about it.
Well, that means so much that it affected you. And the person you're talking about is my friend Suze Mondello, who at this time of recording is still hanging in there amazingly. I did that interview with her February 14th. Okay. But a
lot of wisdom, and there's a lot of beauty in that podcast.
And it really grounded me in, like, what am I complaining about from day to day? My heel hurts, I have plantar fasciitis. And I don't want to diminish people's pain, but when you look at someone dying of cancer, suddenly you really put things in perspective.
Right. Yeah.
But on the flip side, anxiety is real. And I have known people, and maybe you are one of them, who wound up in emergency rooms thinking they're having heart attacks. And so I thought you would be a very good person to kind of help us through the spiritual side of anxiety. Sure.
Well, I can tell you, I vividly remember the first panic attack that I ever had. And I was in a Chili's in downtown Chattanooga, and I was pastoring a small church in North Chattanooga at the time. And we had all gone out for dinner. And I remember we were having a great time. We were laughing. I was surrounded by people I like. I was in a city I like. There was nothing, I was not in any danger. Life was good in most ways. And I had a good job, and I was in a band that was doing real well, and pastoring a church. It's like the trifecta of things that could be going well. And I stood up to go use the restroom. I remember I got to the restroom in the Chili's. I like walked down the hall, and as I entered the restroom, I just thought, I knew it's wrong to use the words I thought. I knew I was dying. I knew I was about to be dead of a heart attack. Huh. And well, not a heart attack. At that time, it hadn't manifested that it was a heart attack, but at that time, I was positive that I would be dead within moments. And so I turned around and I went back to the table, to the other men that were also pastors at that church who I trusted. I sat down and I said, I'm not okay. I'm going to die. And that was the first time that happened. I didn't die, obviously. And
can I ask how old you were?
Oh, I was probably 25.
Mm-hmm. So a young man, no reason, right? No medical reasons.
Yeah, no medical reason. No medical reason. And then it didn't happen again for a long time. And then it would happen with more frequency. And I did end up in the hospital. I would feel pain. I would feel really terror. Just it was the certainty of death. It was the being so positive that it's imminent. I think really, and through a lot of therapy, I'm a big mental health proponent. I think normalizing mental health is, really in the church, especially even then, like we've made huge strides since then, even just in the last 20 years. You didn't just talk about mental illness or anxiety or panic. That's not like a thing that you did, because people would say, well, like, your trust should be in God, or if it's your time, it's your time, or
yeah, you had a different kind of baggage as a pastor.
Yeah. And so there, people would want to just pray for you. I'll pray for you. I still feel like I'm going to die, and so I really did. I was lucky to have some people in my sphere who were counselors, and to get with them. And I actually think a lot of it stemmed from the fact that I was sort of going from young man to man.
I
was making a transition as, at that point, having my first kid and working an important job or whatever. And, now having the responsibility of being a pastor.
All those people depending on you.
Yeah. And so, it was not long after I met you, actually, that my father died. And
I remember that.
And I was really, that was a trauma. I had a great relationship with my dad, and we were very close, and he was beloved. And, he had this job, and he had this family, and he was very active in our church and all these things. And really, over years of therapy, it was really uncovering that trauma had kind of stayed with me in a way that I was realizing, oh, I'm becoming a man. This is where I die. I'm up until that moment, really. And I think you would know, you have a lot of people that knew me at the time you first met me. I was certainly a person who thought I was bulletproof.
Yeah.
I would,
as most 19-year-old boys do. Right?
Yeah. I would go anywhere, do anything, walk down any alley,
Yeah, we crashed a wedding together, right?
Yeah, yes, yeah. It's not it's no problem, And that
You
wedding
met rock stars.
that's right. It could have been in East St. Louis. I would have still gone and never thought. Never thought it was a deal. And it was sort of like these panics were coming out of the fact that I was loving things that weren't myself. When I was younger, I just loved myself, and okay, that's such a loving yourself on one hand is such a deep, difficult ask for some people. Some people never get there. They live their whole lives and they never love themselves. And so they really have a hard time loving anybody else. And then you have somebody like me, like I grew up in a very supportive, very loving, I had no reason not to love myself. And I was just learning how to love my child, or actually like love a wife or love a congregation. And that all just sort of fell in on me, and then, continued to fall in on me for many years.
And don't you think, I mean, especially for me, when I had a child, my first child, all my stuff came up about how I grew up and was raised. And I mean, I think it's maybe just part of the process, right?
Yeah. And it affected me in this very, what began to really emerge was this, this thing, some of your listeners may be aware of this verbiage, but it's called intrusive thought. And so two things really plague me, even to this day. They're managed, but they are part of my everyday life, which is, catastrophizing things, thinking, what is the absolute worst version of this, right? Well, it's standing in a Chili's and you're going to die. You're going to leave your newborn son with no father. And then the other is intrusive thought, which is like these terrible, crippling feelings that I'm going to do something horrible, like kill my son, or drive a car full of people off a cliff, or whatever. And what I learned over years of counseling was actually that this is coming from an intense amount of focus. When we talk about people, obviously, like I'm a prototypical ADD kid. And anybody out there who's listening to this, you could search Rob Alderman and you'll find like I'm in everything. I'm doing everything. And people mistake ADD for having no focus, but actually, like ADD is like you have massive focus about one thing. It's like when you should be doing your grades, you're actually thinking about being in a rock band. And when you should be cleaning your room, you're thinking about being in a rock band. And when you should be doing the dishes, you're thinking about being in a rock band. And right. And so the way intrusive thought manifested itself with me was it sort of co-opted that extreme focus. Right. So when you and I met, and I was working for night times, it's all I thought about. And I would leave school and get in the car and drive to St. Louis and go see shows, and then write about those shows or do cartoons about those shows and go back and do it again. And that was like all I wanted to do. So
which is a long journey for a 19-year-old from Tennessee.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was worse from Indiana. The first trip. Yeah. The original trip, I think, scared my parents the most. But it is a long trip. Right. But just that hyper focus that like,
right. We were talking on your last visit here about how you met me on the internet, and you're trying to tell your parents that this random woman from Prodigy was going to let you stay at her place. And
well, at that point, I was having to explain the internet.
Right.
I was trying to explain to my parents what the internet is and how a person from St. Louis could even be on it.
You were giving your parents all kinds of anxiety.
Sure.
Rob, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back, and we'll maybe get some techniques recommended by you for dealing with anxiety.
Absolutely.